Okay, g'day YouTube. What I'm going to go on with now is the tubing, the fittings, and bending the tubing and getting it all in the rig. It's Primochill 1/2 inch outer diameter rigid acrylic tube. You get 4 24-inch tubes per package. You can also buy them in longer lengths if you buy them not in a pack of 4, if you buy them on their own, I think. And it works with ghost compression fitting, which I've got here. This is clear. You can get it in all sorts of different colours and UV reactive and all sorts of stuff like that. Just open it up. You do get 4 in a tube, however I've already used 2 of them. And they come like that, individually in plastic, and it's just, yeah, pretty self-explanatory really, isn't it? Alright, so here's a tube. I just got it out of the plastic. Got my calipers right here, and I'll find out what the inside diameter is like for you. Alright, so it's 97.5 or thereabouts mil on the inside. The outside is about 12.8. Alright, so this is the fitting itself. Primochill Rigid Ghost it's called. This one I have here is in nickel plated black, which is a pretty decent match for Bits Power Black Sparkle and XSPC Black Chrome. It's a little bit dirty, but anyway. Comes in with a compression ring, just like any other compression fitting, and an O-ring on the inside there. G1/4 inch thread fitting, just like industry standard nowadays, I suppose. There's another O-ring on the inside there where it seals onto the block or whatever fitting you're going to use. The tube, here's one I prepared earlier, goes inside, and you can see it sort of goes inside the fitting like that. It's a pretty snug fit, and then your O-ring goes in the gap, and your compression ring tightens in on the O-ring. One thing to note with these is the, bear with me, sorry, I'll just grab my calipers out again. The G1/4 inch thread is pretty long. I'll just mark one, eyeball it. Alright, so it's about probably 5.8 to 6 mil in depth for the G1/4 inch thread, which is not an issue in most fittings, just goes on like that. However, I know on the EK water block that I used, which was the for the GTX 780, you can't use a fitting that is any longer than 5 mil because it will actually impede the flow on the water block. EK provides you with, bear with me, I'll just try and pick this up. EK provides you with a spacer that looks like this with an O-ring. I don't know how wide it is, probably we'll find out. 2.5 mil spacer. Only issue with this is because of the design of these 1/4 inch threads, it's not exactly a perfect fit on there. See, it has a whole heap of movement, so you can't really use it. If I use that on this, for example, screw it in, you can see when you spin it, it's definitely not perfect. So the way I overcame that was to simply not use these spacers that come with the EK block. I just used any other normal spacer, and then that fits perfectly on the block. Alright, so the fittings themselves go on like this. You just put your O-ring on like that. You're supposed to put the compression fitting on obviously first, but because this is an offcut, and then you just slide that in there and tighten up your O-ring, your compression ring, and it's a pretty snug fit. It won't come out easily. If I pulled it out real hard now, I'd be able to get it out, but obviously you're not going to be moving it around that much. Plus, once this is on a block, you can tighten that a lot tighter. Show you now is how I've been cutting them. basically I'm using a hobby saw, looks something like this. This is not the ideal one because it won't actually cut the whole way through because it hits on it, but I've been getting over it anyway. You just cut it and then you roll it a little bit and cut it and roll a little bit. I can show you that now. Basically, I'll get an offcut that I don't really like, something like that. Basically what I do is I'd have, just say, my 2 fittings in the system and I know the length I want. I'd get a pencil. I did use a Sharpie at one stage, but it was an absolute nightmare to get the black off it. So what I've been doing is using a pencil, just making a rough mark of where I would want the cut, and then I would simply cut it. Give me a second, like this, using this mat again, so I can line everything up nice and perfect, and then I'd line the saw up on where I want to make the cut, and just score it and cut it like this. And you'd end up with something that looks like that. It's certainly not perfect, but it doesn't have to be. Then what I'd get is a sanding block like this. It's a nice rough one, and I'd just sand it like this. Spinning it in my hand at the same time to get it nice and flat. Now I know in the Primochill YouTube video they said that these don't have to be perfect, but it's peace of mind really. I just like it to be in the fitting, nice and sealed. Anything that's going to prevent me getting a leak will be good. So once I do that, it's obviously very rough. I will get some 800 grit sandpaper and just go like this. Blow it off and you end up with something like this. A little bit stuck in there. Now these fittings, I found a problem with them sliding on. I saw on the YouTube video, on the Primochill one, he was just sliding them on really easy. I found that with these ones that I had, it was really difficult to get them on without scratching the tube. I don't have the problem anymore because I fixed it by what I was doing was just tearing off a bit of 400 grit sandpaper. I don't know if it's these ones, if it's because these ones were nickel plated and not anodized, but they were just a tiny little bit too big to fit over the tube. So what I was doing was just running a bit of sandpaper on the inside here, just like this. Just taking a little bit off, just to make them slide on perfectly without scratching the tube. I also was just chamfering the edges slightly on this with a bit of sandpaper, and again on the inside, just to make it a lot easier to put the O-ring on and to put everything on. You end up with something like that. Okay, so I'm just showing you now the runs I'm doing. I'm to the last run of the tubing. I haven't really taken that much video, I'm sorry, of bending the tubes, but I'll do that now on the last run. This is the first time I've ever done this, so it's a bit hard to do it with a video camera when I'm sort of experimenting for myself. This is what I've done so far. So I've got one rigid tube from the top radiator to the bottom fittings on the front radiator. I initially wanted that tube off this one at the front, but it was just easier to do the drain system this way than because of the way the pump's mounted. And plus I've sort of worked out that if it was at the front anyway, you wouldn't be able to see it through the side panel window when the side panel's on, so it's probably better having it up the back there anyway. So I've got that one run there. That was obviously really easy to do, just cut it to length, stick it in there. This is the sort of basic drain system I've come up with. It's not perfectly all lined up at the moment just because I need a spacer on this. It's slightly not straight to the Mark 1 eyeball anyway. but it's not too bad so far. I'm probably going to, instead of using that plug just there, just put this tap here and make a bit of a groove out of here so you can get to it. It should look something like that, with a groove cut out with the plug on the end. So to drain it, all you need to do is undo that plug, fit up a tube to a bucket and turn it on. That's the plan anyway. I don't know if I'll get that far. I'm just waiting on a fitting to fix that on. These are some of the ones that I fucked up. This is what happens when you overheat the tube too much with a heat gun. It bubbles up. As you can see, that bubble actually has popped and it's now a hole in the tube. So that's using the heat gun. I just held it on there for a little bit too long and it actually melted that bit of the tube, so I cut that off. That's useless. I'll show you how I'm bending the tubes in a second. This is another cut off I did, one that I wrecked. I followed that Primochill. I watched that Primochill YouTube video on how to bend tubes. So at the start I was using, you know, something circular and bending it around it to get it perfect. But I was finding that it was actually marking on the inside there. I don't know if you can make that out, but there's sort of an impression where the object I was using to bend it around, which was a fitting, was making marks on it. So rather than do that, I'll show you how I'm bending in a second, but basically I'm just melting the tube, lying it on this so I can get it all perpendicular, keep it flat, and then bend it. And so, you know what I mean? So I'm sort of lying it down, lining it up like that, bending it so it bends down in 2 squares, which is, you know, 2 centimeters, and then perpendicular down this line. To sort of get that perfect bend, I'm just using my hands to mold it rather than pressing it up against something so it indents. Another thing I noticed is that in that Primochill video, the silicone tube he's using, which they were marketing, is solid, whereas mine's not. I don't know if that's because they've changed something up, but I bought it. It was a Primochill marketed item I bought. I don't know if maybe it got swapped over, but I think because it's not a solid tube, it's actually hollow. The silicone, it's bending a lot easier. The kinking a lot easier, I should say. But look, I'm impressed with it. I'm happy with it so far. This is sort of my Mark 1 version of this tubing. I'm not sure if these are the runs I'm going to keep. Shut up, stupid cat. I'm not sure if these are the runs that I'm going to keep, but I'm pretty happy with it so far. Alright, so now I'm going to bend a tube for this last run here. I've got one brand new one right in front of me. I'll go over to my working space just here, and this is the silicone tube that I got. You can see it's hollow as opposed to the one that was in the Primochill YouTube video that was solid. This is Primochill, but anyway, they also charged a packet for it in Australia anyway. I think it was about $13 for a length of fucking silicone. Anyway, all you have to do is, give me a second while I set this up. Just slide it in, goes in pretty easy. If you just twist it as you're putting it in. And basically, the length of the tube, the length of the silicone is longer each end. So it gives you sort of something to hold on to and bend it. Because it's the first bend, rather than attempting to bend it, give me a second, I can get my finger, you know, about here somewhere, to get that bend, what I do is go a little bit longer, so bend it there, makes it a bit easier to play with, and then I just cut it to length, if that makes sense. Anyway, give me a second, I'll just set up, and then I'll start bending once I let it put the camera. Alright, so to start bending this tube, first I need to don my tactical tube bending gloves. I do recommend you wear gloves only because it's gets pretty hot with this heat gun. So I'll show you how they bend. I'll just flick that on. Give me a second to heat up. So I'm going to make a bend about here. All I'm going to do is just heat up probably about that much of it until it almost goes liquid like. We'll see when it starts bending. Starting a little bit now. You want to wait till it gets so bendy that it's almost feels like a liquid. There's still a bit of force that it takes to bend that. You want it to be almost liquid-like. About there, I reckon. And then I'm just going to put it down. And sort of move it. That off, so you can see it's still easily bendable and pliable. If I just line it up so it's all flat, and I'm putting force on it down so it stays sort of rigid as well, like stays 90 degrees. I mean, I'll just hold it like that until it toughens up. Sorry, bear with me. So you see that even though it's cooling down, it's still pliable, so you've got to sort of hold force on it to where you want it, and it's good because it gives you that little bit of adjustability. The good thing about this is if you fuck this bend up, you just reheat it at the bend and you can almost get them dead straight again. There'll still be imperfections in it, but you can certainly, if I didn't like the angle, I could sort of bend it. I might try and actually make this one a bit steeper, I think. But it's starting to get hard now, still a little bit of play in it. I've read that some people run them under cold water to cool them down a bit quicker, but honestly they take fuck all to cool down, maybe 30 seconds to a minute. So if you just hold it like this for 30 seconds to a minute, it's pretty much solid now. And that's the bend we end up with. I haven't used it around an object because I didn't want that indent in the middle there, and it's a pretty easy, pretty nice bend, I reckon. So that's sort of the bend I want. I will actually take the tube out of this now and I'll cut it to about there, I think. So I'll just mark it with a pencil, cut it, and then I'll place it in and mark out where I want to make that next bend for the CPU, and I'll make that bend next. I'll just have to take off my tactical gloves to do it. Alright, and there's the finished bend I just made. There's no marks in it, there's no imperfections in it. It's a tiny little bit kinked, but you can't really tell. I don't think it'll affect flow at all. So what I'm going to do now is just mark it with a pencil where I want to cut it, and cut it. Mortar! So on a 90-degree bend here going down, and then another 90-degree bend going in. So basically I'll line it up to where I think it should be. I'll make some marks with the pencil, put the silicone tube in, and make a bend here down. Okay, so you can see where I've just roughly marked with pencil sort of where the bend needs to be. And this bend is going to be a 90-degree down bend in reference to that one. This is why it's good to use it on a nice flat surface, because I can hold it down and then bend it along to the 90 degrees. Alright, so let's do that now. See if I can rig up my first person camera again with this tripod tucked in my shirt. When it's wet, sorry, when it's still hot, so the plastic's still wet, I can sort of move this left or right and just stretch it a little bit. So if it's not perfectly in line with the CPU, all I'll do is reheat this bend and, yeah, like I said, pull it in that way or pull it in that way. As long as it's all flat, and at a nice 90-degree angle, which I think I've done. And that one's all flat too, so it's all perfect. It's starting to get a bit dry now. Yeah, that's pretty good. So I'll leave the silicone in there and I'll just go and see what it looks like. Give me a second. So I'll just slide that up in there where it goes. And you can see I've missed it massively. Yeah. So I'm going to have to reheat that. Be careful not to kink it, that's all. We'll see how that goes. I'll probably have to reheat it just to straighten this bit here up and probably bend that bit a little bit more to stop that so much of a kink going on. But it's all trial and error, isn't it? Alright, so that's pretty dry. Let's go try that out. Alright, so that's in. And you can see I'm getting closer. I just need to reheat it and straighten this up a bit because this bend here is going to be very prominent in the system. I sort of want it to be perfect. Alright, so I'm sort of happy with this one now. I think it's probably going to line up, might be a little bit out, but nothing a little bit of heat won't fix. So what I'm going to do now is that 90-degree bend that will take it back into the CPU. I've never done a bend this close to another bend, so this should be interesting to see what happens here. You're along for the ride with me. Alright, let's do it. I'll sort of mark out where I need it. I'll just try and get it to stay in there. What I'll do is I've just got a spare length. I'll just sort of line up where I want it, and then I'll mark it with pencil where the bend needs to be, and I'll try and bend it around about where that is. I'm going to do that bend. This one's going to be a bit difficult, so I'm going to heat it here, and then that's the top of the radiator, so it'll be bent. I'll have to hold it like that and bend it 90 degrees that way. What I'll do then is remove the tube, cut it to the approximate length, so I've got some, like a mess around with it in the case, and try and get the bends a bit better. Fuck it.
Intermission.